Bosun Amafaye, and this is a very special edition of the African Energy Frontiers. What is the future of Africa's energy? And that's a major question for one of the panels at this year's Future Investment Initiative Institute Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now let's listen to this panel and how that question was addressed.
We have four themes that we want to discuss. The first one is about the potential. What type of energy, what type of technologies, what type of regions, where is most potential? Second one is specifically about technologies, including digital. What do we need to make this happen? And the third one is more about what we need to collaborate between the public sector, private sector, policymakers, etc. And the last one, how do we make it happen?
If we look at the dynamics of Africa, we cannot benchmark the continent at the same standards. We talk about industrial revolution in the world. The Western nations have had their first, second, third, and Africa has not had its first. So my view is Africa's blessed with a lot of natural resources. Gas is one of them. So if you look at Nigeria with 206 TCF of gas, the focus should be on its transition fuel. If you look at East Africa from the Horn going down to Tanzania, Mozambique, there's a lot of gas finds. We cannot leave those behind and then double up our efforts on renewables alone. So the focus should be transition, renewable. It's got to be a proper energy mix that will be the sustaining balance for the continent. The biggest missing middle, if you look at a big economy like Nigeria's infrastructure, so midstream infrastructure shortages, old above ground infrastructure. So availability of capital to build out pipeline network for gas distribution is huge. Another big area we're investing in today is gas processing. We're just positioning 150 million scuffs of gas processing facility into the distribution market to help fuel industrial growth.
In Hess Holdings, we believe that Africa's energy future is going to be dominated by gas and renewables. Gas is very key. It's a transition fluid, and we have plenty of it. But renewables is going to be very compelling because it offers us opportunities to address energy gaps in areas that are underserved today, areas that are outside grids, and offers a very compelling proposition around portability, around reaching the further places in the hinterland that it will be difficult to get grids to. So we see that the journey that Africa is on is a journey from energy deficiency to energy sufficiency. And to get a future of energy sufficiency, it will require a combination of sources, both traditional like hydrocarbons, traditional renewables as I call it, like solar, like hydro, and emerging renewables like solar, geothermal, and the others. I think the technologies that will enable solar will be key. So it's the whole value chain. So it's from panels. There's lots of advancements, but more needs to be done to make it more affordable. There's technologies for inverters, technologies for storage. And then importantly, beyond solar itself, because the solution for Africa has to be a tops-down and a bottoms-up. Tops-down with traditional sources, bottoms-up with solar, distributed solar, so mini-grids, and the technologies around mini-grids will be key. And then lastly, around digital, to improve collection, distribution efficiencies to replace the legacy analog systems.
I'm not saying that gas is not part of the transition. In fact, it is, because countries like the countries in Africa that are emerging, they need all the energy that they can. If you look at the per capita demand that today is a quarter or a fifth of what it is in Latin America, is 1/10 of what it is in Europe. But even simply to bring all of Africa to the level of, say, Egypt or Tunisia in terms of consumption requires to multiply by 3.5 times the installed capacity. So there's a lot to be done, and we believe that the cheapest, the fastest, the most secure is renewables. But certainly, when the economy is growing at the speed that is growing in Africa, you need the complement. So you need the gas-fired and potentially other sources. We're now in Egypt developing particularly wind, but also solar PV. In fact, we just started production last month at our Komombo plant, 200 megawatt PV, and now we're progressing on 1.1 gigawatt wind. So you see that there is what is the resource that is mostly available. Morocco and South Africa, again, it's largely solar, but you see Central Africa, there's a lot of hydro resources. So I think that that will be a leading technology in those countries. And then, of course, if you are blessed with gas, that will be a complement. So I would say that at the end, you want something that is simple so that you can be fast, because it's not really a trilemma, it's a quadrilemma. I add the speed component to it.
You know, I think the question is really a question about growth and a question about how fast and how far Africa wants to grow. If Africa wants to grow today, our GDP is about $3.2 trillion, and we need to do a lot more and a lot faster. Then we need all the technologies we can harness. Africa is already at a tipping point on the transition. 60% of Africa's energy is renewable because of hydro. We have a lot of the economies are using hydro. But if you look at Namibia today with hydrogen, if you look at Egypt itself with hydrogen, Kenya, geothermal. So I think that the diversity of the kinds of energy that we have on the continent are quite important. The importance, I think, is what you asked, is are we going to reach energy storage fast enough? That is really the issue, is, you know, if we can get battery energy storage capacities quickly, that will be the new technology that will really advance and accelerate, you know, entry into this new technological age. So that's the first one. The second one is 40% of Africa's energy today is lost in transmission. How do we finance the energy that we need today? I think starting with what Riyam was talking about, carbon markets, and making carbon markets effective is because, as we heard from Minister Al-Jadan, you know, fiscal budgets are stretched, whether it's in the advanced economies or whether it's in the developing economies. So we do need to find new ways and new sources of financing. One of those is carbon markets. In the advanced world, $900 billion already of carbon markets trade is happening. In the developing world, we're only $90 billion. Countries need to be able to develop their carbon markets so they can use some of those resources to invest in renewable energy.
As you know, 43% of Africans don't have access to electricity. What century are we in? This is very important for the continent that we finance, be it renewable, be it gas, be it others. All options are on the table. When we talk about renewable and carbon markets, which is very important topic to talk about, there are tools to finance that through IREX. We talked to Aqua Power about IREX, and it's a very important tool to finance different projects in Africa. So we need to look at it from a lens of carbon markets and how we can utilize that to scale projects and finance, because the major problem in Africa right now is financing. So this is how to utilize different tools. This is very important to look at, and how to be innovative in utilizing those.
Now, from answering that question about the future of energy for Africa, then another question was raised. How do we accelerate energy transition for a continent solely in need of electricity and every form of energy? And that's coming next.
We are done dreaming of an industrialized Africa. No more enduring long journeys in darkness, No more imagining life without constant power. We are done. We are done. Done tolerating 24 hours without power, load shedding, blackouts, and power cuts. Enough. Imagine a life where our abundant natural resources can't power a generation. We can't cope with that reality. 600 million Africans still lack access to power. We have the solution. It's time to turn imagination into action. African Energy Week 2024 is the platform to implement change, sign deals, and take decisive action and implement. Join us. Invest in African energies. Energy growth through an enabling environment and be part of the movement that brings hope to millions across the continent. It's not just about power, it's about empowering lives and giving African hope. Be there to witness the transformation. African Energy Week 2024, where imagination becomes reality. Secure your seat now. Don't miss out on African Energy Week 2024. Visit our website and buy your tickets today. Let's light up Africa and create a brighter future together.
Project. At the time you need to build that project. Sign, baby, sign.
Now, welcome back. The world is at the cusp of the curve of accelerating to energy transition to clean form of energy to keep the climate and the planet safe and much better. But where will the money be found? Investments in energy worldwide for this year is estimated at $3 trillion. $2 trillion of that is expected to go into clean energy. So how would Africa, a continent of 1.2 billion people, accelerate its own transition into clean energy? Let's take a listen to this panelist.
A week ago, you gave a very important and impactful speech in Singapore in which you said current transition planning for the energy transition does not take into account the needs of Asia and the global South. What did you mean by that?
The issue that we are seeing between the global North and the global South, that in the global South, they are using today 1/10 of the energy compared to the global North per individual. Basically, if you look at it, it's 22 barrels per individual in the US, it's 9 in Europe, it's only 1.4 barrel per individual in India, and it's 1 barrel in Africa. At the end of the day, cost matters, and we can see when you want to have a transition that is acceptable to all, especially where the growth in population and GDP is mainly in the global South, you need something affordable. The average per capita income in the global South, you're talking about $6,600 to $9,600 compared to $63,000 to $68,000. So you need an energy transition that is affordable, secure, and at the same time sustainable. I think what you need to do is to transition by focusing first and reducing the emission from existing energy sources. We talked about coal peaking up. Coal increased last year by 2 million barrels of oil equivalent. We are at record level in oil, at record level in coal, and at record level in gas. So while we are not achieving our target of reducing coal, and it is continually increasing, we need to focus on reducing emissions. We achieved through efficiency improvement 90 million barrels over the last 15 years, 90 million barrels reduction of oil equivalent, compared to 15 million barrels of oil equivalent that was added by solar and wind. You need to take the economic maturity of every country, their needs and their requirement, and then transition, it will always depend on their economic maturity and what they can afford at the end of the day.
Reality today, we believe in renewables since 2008, 2009, we done our first decision in the strategy. We done our implementation in 2010. And I have to say, I think, as he said, His Royal Highness today, Saudi Arabia is not giving subsidy as many other countries. Saudi Arabia is getting very high returns using, the renewable versus the conventional energy. But you have to say that, I'm sure you know it better, that you cannot really take renewable and replace the conventional. You need both.
General, not just in the kingdom, is enough money going into the infrastructure, into the grids, into storage?
And this is what is really differentiating factor in Saudi Arabia. Thanks to our great leadership and thanks to His Royal Highness, the Minister of Energy, many countries, they want to do it, but they did not know how to put priorities. I think in Saudi Arabia, really they thought about this grid early and how to strengthen the grid and how to make the grid is available to take this renewable. Because in many countries, the biggest obstacle today is not about renewable, is really the infrastructure that's available, the grid is availability, and how you will be able to take the renewable, because it's a different in the operation in the system. And that's what make here successfully that Saudi Arabia reach 44 gigawatt project under construction, project under operation, project in an advanced stage of development, that there is clear vision and clear objective that this grid is going to take 130 gigawatt in the future of renewable. And the storage, as you see today, you are talking about contracted storage of 26 gigawatt and storage by 2030, you are talking about 48 gigawatt. This is going to be the biggest storage today in any system.
Well, as the world is moving into the direction of renewables and electrification, of course, there are tensions on the global supply chain. This is particularly true for wind power today, notably offshore wind. It's also true for cable. High voltage cable is clearly something that is under tension everywhere in the world. Now, the more the countries can define a very clear roadmap and stick to their roadmap, the less depending they are on these supply chain tensions. And I really believe that the kingdom is super clear on the direction. So that's the best way to avoid the tensions that might go up and down on the supply chain, is to have a super clear roadmap and to stick to the roadmap. If you want to be serious about having an electrical system that works 24/7 and has also the lowest possible content of carbon, you need to have dispatchable power sources that are not consuming carbon. And the only ones that are doing this are hydro and nuclear. So that's why a large number of countries are considering nuclear in the future as part of their electrical mix. Some of them are starting from a very important part of existing nuclear. That's the case for the US, for France, and today for China. Others are starting from a much lower part, but depending on everyone's legacy, there is a must at the end to create an electrical system that can resist to the fluctuation of demand day in, day out, independently from the fluctuation of wind and sun.
Now, the 3-day summit here on future investment has provided Africa another window into its horizons as far as energy is concerned, combining classic energy, what we call fossil fuel, renewable, and every other form of energy to eradicate energy poverty on the continent. And that's your Energy Frontier Special. Until next time, I am Bosin Amafai. I'll see you soon.